Share. In this video I'm going to show you how to make a lined drawstring bag. This bag is unique in that it has 3 different fabrics and a different kind of casing, and it's also lined, which means that it's completely finished out on the inside as well as the outside. I have 3 fabrics here: my main bag fabric, the contrast band, and the lining. I have 2 pieces of 28-inch ribbon, and then you'll use just your basic sewing supplies: the cutting mat, ruler, and cutter, sewing machine, thread to match, iron and ironing board. I'm going to cut the lining first. I'm going to fold my piece of fabric in half with the selvages together, well, with this one selvage together, and a fold along the bottom edge. I'll line the fold up with my 0 line. And cut the 10-inch way first. Line the ruler up at 10 inches here and 10 inches here. Flip the mat around. Trim off at the 0 line. Now this needs to be 27 3/4, so divided in half will be 13 7/8. Since the fold is on the 0 line, I'll line this up with 13 7/8. Cut it, and there's my lining piece. Now I need 2 3 by 9 inch pieces of this little, for the contrast casing. It's the same as the lining. Since this is such a small piece, I'm going to use just my ruler. I'll cut those 2 sides, flip it around, and line this up the 9 inches and the 3 inches. And since my fabric was doubled, and I now have 2 9 by 3 inch pieces. This is the main bag fabric, and I need a 10 by 24 inch piece. So again, I unfold the fabric and fold it in half with these selvages even. I'll line the fold up with the 0 line. I'm lining my ruler up with a 10-inch mark. And cut. Flip the mat around along with everything else. I'm lining my ruler up at the 0 line. Now I have my 10-inch width. Now I want it to be, this piece to be 24 inches long. I'll fold it in half. Half of 24 is 12. So with a fold along the 0 line, I'll cut this off at the 12-inch line. And there's my 10 by 24 inch bag fabric. Now this is the fabric that's going to be the top contrasting band edge, the top part of the bag. And I need 2 3 by 10 inch pieces. Since this piece is small and will fit on my board, I will only use my ruler to cut it out. I'm using the ruler 3 inches here. Cut up and across. And cut this 10 inches long. Now I have my bag all cut out. Here are the 2 top band contrast pieces, also called fabric A in the pattern. Here's the lining and the 2 casing contrast bands called fabric B in the pattern, and the main bag fabric called the fabric C. I'm going to start at the ironing board. This edge is going to be ironed up 3/8 of an inch. If you would like, you can mark it at 3/4 of an inch and fold that to your line. This is going to finish off the end of the casing on your bag. Now I'm going to top stitch along this folded edge. This will just keep it in place. I'm going to just do these one right after the other. That's called chain sewing. It saves on thread and threads to trim. I'll just put them in one after the other until all 4 edges are top stitched down. I'll take it from the machine and go back to the ironing board. I'm going to iron it in half lengthwise with all edges even. And then start pinning the bag together. Here's the main part of the bag, which is fabric C. I'm going to lay it right side up. And center each one of these pieces, the raw sides all together. Center this on both ends. And then lay fabric A, the contrast band, on top. And pin all of these together. Okay, now we're ready to sew. The main bag fabric is here, right side up. The fold is on this edge and the raw edge is here, and the contrast lining is right side down. Now I'm ready to sew the seam along both ends. Now I'm sewing this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Now I'm going to open this up and see, here's the casing. Now I'm going to edge stitch this casing down . And then do the same for the other side. And back to the ironing board. Now press this open with the seam going up. And back to pinning. Now I'm going to fold this in half, right sides together. First thing I want to do is check and make sure that my seams match right here, and put a pin right there. Line up the edges and pin it with a few more pins. Flip it around and do this side the same. Now I'm going to go ahead and pin the lining as well. Right sides together. Now I'm going to leave an opening in the lining so that I can turn the whole bag right side out when I'm done. You can either, for leaving an opening, you can pin 2 pins as a reminder not to sew it shut, or you can just grab your chalk and mark a line there as a reminder as well. Taking an extra minute to mark that will save you time from having to use the seam ripper to rip it out if you forget to leave the opening. Now I'm going to sew all 4 of these side seams on the bag, leaving an opening in one. I'm sewing this with a 3/8 inch seam allowance. Being careful at these seams to not get them twisted or turned back, but to sew them just as they are pressed. Now the other side. Now the lining, I like to always start on the side that has the opening so I can leave it before I forget about it. Always backstitch well on either side of an opening. I'm just going to lift up and scoot forward to my other mark. Backstitch again and keep sewing. Now I'm going to go to the ironing board and press all of these seams that I just sewed open. I'm going to iron these seams open using a sleeve board. You don't have to use one, but it makes it a lot easier for pressing these seams open. If you don't have one, You can just do it like this. You'll end up with some wrinkles in your bag, which you can just go back and press them out, being careful not to press the seam that you just ironed open. I'm just ironing these seams open now because with the lined bag, it will be very hard to get them to press nicely when you're finished. Now I'm going to connect the bag with the lining. Turn the lining right side out and slip it into the bag. Matching the seams. I'll pin this together. Okay, so the lining is on the inside, right sides together with the bag. My seams are matching up at the sides. I'm pinning the top edges even. I'm going to sew with a 3/8 inch seam. I'm starting close to a side seam and being careful to keep those seams pressed open. Sew across and then around the top of the bag. Be careful as you sew this. You don't want to get any little tucks. Now on this, instead of back stitching, I'm just going to overlap my stitches for about 1 inch. Since it is in a lining, none of this is going to show, and that will secure it sufficiently. Now I'm going to turn the bag out. Here's the lining. I need to find my opening. Here it is. Reach inside and grab the bag. Pull it out that hole in the lining. I'm going to use this little point turner to poke out the corners. Now I'm going to iron the bag, just the outside part of the bag. It irons very easily since I already pressed those seams open earlier. Here's the opening, and I'm going to sew it closed by machine. I'm just stitching close to the folded edges with both opening edges right on top of each other. Back stitching at the beginning and the end. And that sews my opening closed. Back to the ironing board. Now I'm going to tuck the lining into the bag. And press this top seam. I want to roll this seam right to the edge, and I don't want any lining to show on the outside. I want the seam to be right on the edge. I always dampen my fingers and it helps it roll better. Now it's all pressed. I'm going to top stitch along this edge and along that seam. Since I'm top stitching, I'm going to lengthen my stitch length and not back stitch. I'm just starting. I'm using this little line on my presser foot as the guide for which the edge of the fabric is going by. Okay, I'm going to overlap about 1/2 inch of stitches. Now I'm going to shorten my stitch to almost 0 and take just a few more stitches. This will neatly finish off your top stitching and lock your threads. Now I'm just going to lift up and scoot over to my other seam that I'm going to top stitch. And I'm going to start sewing. When you're top stitching this, be careful that it doesn't start getting a twist in it. I'm holding this out to make sure that my fabric is staying flat and my distance between the edge of the bag and this row of top stitching. Now I'm coming up on where I started. Since that is not backstitched, I'm going to overlap about 1/2 inch. Then I'm going to turn my stitch length to almost 0, which is the shortest stitch. Now I will overlap the stitches about 1/2 inch. This is a very neat and secure way to finish the top stitching. Now I'm going to thread the ribbon through the casing. Here is a 28-inch piece of ribbon. I'm going to put it on the bodkin. Now I'm going to slip this through the casing. And on around to the other side. And pull it through. And tie these ends together. Trim at an angle so that they do not fray. Now I'm going to do the same thing with the other ribbon, starting on the other side. Tie these together and trim the ends. So now we're finished, and you learned about lining where there's no raw edges, and you have a contrast band with a new type of casing. So here's the finished bag.